How is it already October? Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Angelina and today I'm going to be sharing with you the books I read in the month of September. I think I read like 7 books or something this month. Let me check. Okay, yes, I've read 7 books in the month of September, and I still have to read one more before the month is over. Today is Friday, and by Tuesday I have to have another Shakespeare play read for my Shakespeare class, but whatever. So by the end of the month I'll have like 8 books read, so go me. We're moving up. This was an improvement from last month. As you guys can see, I'm back in front of my bookshelves, which means I'm home. I decided to come home for the weekend. I was missing my mom and my dog and my books, of course. So let me just get right into it. The first book I read this month, I don't have the physical copy with me because it's my boyfriend's and I returned it to him after I finished, but that is The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. I think is how you say his name. The Case for Christ is a religious book. It is about a man who is atheist going on the quest to find Jesus and become a Christian. If you aren't a Christian but are interested in learning about Jesus and things like that, I recommend reading this book. It was enjoyable. I had a good time reading it. I am Christian. I'm actually Catholic. If you're Catholic, leave a comment down below. Mwah. Lee Strobel is a journalist and he goes on his hunt for Jesus in the way a journalist would, meaning that he meets with a bunch of experts on the subjects. He interviews all sorts of people, and this book is a compilation of his interviews. Let's move on. The second book I read this month was Majesty by Katharine McGee. I love this series. I've talked about it like 3 or 4 times on my channel by now, so if you haven't read this, go read it. It's so good. Majesty is the sequel to American Royals by Katharine McGee. Let me show you it. Alright, American Royals. Ooh, my hair. Let's not do that. American Royals is the first book and Majesty is the second book. And I'm convinced that there's a third book coming out. I haven't seen anything about that, but based on the way that Majesty ended, I needed a third book because things were not completely resolved. So I'm assuming it's going to be a trilogy. American Royals is about America's royal family. It kind of poses the what if question of if America never became a democracy and instead had a monarch. So this follows the kids of the royal family, their struggles, their love lives, the pressure of being an American royal, and Majesty was just the sequel to it. If you love like juicy reality TV, if you love the British monarchy and you love princes and that kind of stuff, you will like these books. If you liked The Selection by Kiera Cass, you will like these books. I feel like these are a better selection. Like they have the same vibe, but these books are arguably better in my opinion. I recommend these. I won't really tell you anything about this book because that would spoil it, but just know that it's the sequel to this one and that they are both so good. My favorite guilty pleasure reads of all time. Go read them. Moving along to number 3, it's definitely less interesting. Well, I don't want to offend anyone who loves Shakespeare, but to me it's less interesting, and that is The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. What can I say? It's a Shakespeare play. It takes place in Italy. There's a couple different plot lines. It's a comedy. It's very anti-Semitic. Or you could say Shakespeare was pointing out anti-Semitism and trying to make a political statement. We'll never know because this was written in the 1500s and we'll never get to talk to Shakespeare. I had to read this book for my Shakespeare class. I'm a secondary education English major, so of course I have to read some Shakespeare. I didn't like it that much. It was okay. Not my favorite Shakespeare play. Like, it was decent. It was fine. It's whatever. Let's move on to something more fun. Let's see what's next. Oh, okay. The next book I read was also for class. This is for my INT class. It's basically a gen ed course, kind of a literature course that my school makes us take. Anyways, that book is The Family Fang by Kevin Wilson. If you haven't heard of this novel before, I will tell you that it has been made into a movie and that the movie stars Christopher Walken. So if the casting for the movie tells you anything, it's that this book is weird. It is extremely weird. It's very odd, but it was actually pretty enjoyable, so there's that. Okay, anyways, let me tell you what it's about. The Family Fang follows a family of artists, but they're not typical artists. Mr. and Mrs. Fang are performance artists of a sort, but their idea of art is going into public spaces such as a mall and creating mass chaos and just seeing how it affects people. Personally, I don't really think of it as art, but this book like asks the question of what is art? What does it mean to create art? This was pretty enjoyable. I liked it. I had a good time reading it. I really want to watch the movie just to kind of like see what they did with the movie. So this is cool. If you're interested in art or just wacky, weird stuff, read the Family Fang. It's a good time. Okay. The next book I read, I talked about in my last wrap-up video, and I said that I wasn't sure if I was going to read it or not. Well, I did read it, and that is The Lost Book of White by Cassandra Clare. I am in no way surprised that I read this book, even after saying I probably wouldn't read it, because like I've mentioned before, I am trash for Cassandra Clare. I read all of her books. Oh, you can't see my Shadowhunter books. They're like down here on this shelf below. I have bought every single Cassandra Clare book. Am I a little ashamed? No. Yeah, not really. I enjoy them. Like I said in my previous wrap-up video, I wasn't going to buy this book because I'm broke and I knew that it wasn't going to be very good. So I was like, I'm just gonna skip on it. But then I got a random package in the mail and it was this book. And it was actually from my mom. My mom had watched my wrap-up video and she felt bad that I was too poor to buy the book, so she sent it to me. So shout out to my mom. I love you, Sherry. That was very kind of you. I did read this book. I would give it maybe 2.5 stars, maybe 3 if I'm feeling generous. That's probably the lowest rating I've ever given a Cassandra Clare book. Most tend to be like a solid 5, but I'm going to be honest, this series is not necessary in any way, shape, or form. Let's talk about it for a second. If you haven't read Cassandra Clare's books, just like go ahead and skip on to the next book. So if you don't know, oh, let me pull out the first book. The Lost Book of White is the sequel to Red Scrolls of Magic, which are the first 2 books in Cassandra Clare's latest series called The Elder Curses, which follow Magnus and Alec at different points in their life. So this book, I think, takes place after City of Fallen Angels, and Magnus and Alec are like first started dating and they're kind of traveling the world. And then the second book is after they already have Max. It's after City of Heavenly Fire, and what even happened? The villains from the first book come back, but so does Ragnar Fell, and this time as a villain, and they are like trying to bring in the greater demon of all demons, Samuel, to like take over the world, and of course Magnus and Alec have to stop it, and they get the whole gang, Clary, Simon, Isabel, Jace, everyone, you know, joins together, and they go into yet another demon realm to save the world. I took some notes. I said, some scenes felt underdeveloped or pointless. This whole book really was pointless. It adds nothing to the overall plot and character development of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Like, I love these characters, don't get me wrong. I love them. But was it necessary to have a 368-page book about this? No, I'm kind of getting a little heated, and I don't know why, because I did still enjoy it, mainly the second half, because the first half was so slow. It took me so long to get through the first half of this book. It wasn't until they like fell into the demon realm that I was like, oh, this is interesting. Now like things are spicing up. Oh, I wrote down here that some of the dialogue was trying too hard to be funny. You know, Cassandra Clare makes great, hilarious characters. They have great comebacks, great comments, they're like witty, they're fun to read. But the dialogue in this book just felt way too forced. It was like, she knows that there's no point to this book, so let's just try to make it funny. It didn't hit. I mean, Jim made an appearance. That was kind of cool. There was a special bonus scene about Jim and Tessa and like a magical dream sequence, so like that was interesting. I'm gonna say this and probably change my mind, but I'm going to say that I'm not going to read the rest of these books because they feel pointless to me. Watch me read them. Cast your votes right now. Do you think I will read the next book in this series? I'm saying I won't, but I think we all know that I probably will. The next book I read is so good. I can't believe I haven't read this book yet. It came out in like 2014, I think. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And that book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I talked about this in my previous wrap-up video because I was currently reading it. Well, I finished it this month. And it took me so long to read because I'm reading it for a book club in my sorority. A couple of us get together and we read a couple chapters every week. So it took like 4 weeks to divide this book up and read it, which is how I think all the other books will be too. We'll take about a month to read a book. Anyways, doesn't matter. This book was so good. If you don't know what it's about, it follows 2 plot lines during World War II, during the Nazi occupation of France. So one character is a blind French girl and the other is a German boy who ends up becoming a Nazi soldier. Eventually the 2 plot lines converge and their stories find each other. It was so good. I felt all the emotions reading it. 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Read it. And the final book I read this month is Laura Lamont's Life in Pictures by Emma Straub. This book was pretty good. I would give it about 3, maybe 3.5 stars out of 5. I bought this in my book shopping vlog where I went to a thrift bookstore. I'll leave that video linked down below, as well as my previous wrap-up video. I enjoyed it. It was an interesting time. So this story follows a young woman who grew up in a small town in Wisconsin and she moves to Hollywood to become a big famous star. She wants to be an actress. It takes place through the 30s, through like the 70s basically, and like the prime time of Hollywood. It's told in a very interesting way. Like the narrator is very emotionless, kind of. I don't really know how to describe it. It's like just a very interesting narration. It was good. If you like old Hollywood stuff, I recommend this. If you like life stories of people, I recommend this. I think that's all the books I've read this month. Not bad. We did pretty good. Do you guys want to see what I'm going to read next? I'll show you. I brought this book home with me to read this weekend while I'm here, and that is A Great and Terrible Beauty by Liva Bray. I am very excited to read this book. It looks so beautiful, for one. It's so beautiful. I've never read anything by Liva Bray before, but I heard that she's good, so I'm excited. This takes place in Victoria, England. I don't know. I don't really like to read summaries of books before I read them. I like to go in knowing nothing. But I'm excited to read this. I'll let you guys know how that goes in my next wrap-up video. And after I read that, I don't know what I'll read next, so stay tuned to find out next month. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and give me a big thumbs up so I can make more videos like this in the future. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!